raising a child. But we're not going to look at it as a set of rules or a how-to guide. Instead, we're going to explore it as a deep, philosophical journey.
So let's just kick things off with a thought that might stop you in your tracks. I mean, think about it. You need a license to drive a car, right? But for parenting, which is arguably one of the biggest responsibilities you can ever have, there's no test, no formal qualification. It's a wild question, and it really forces you to rethink what parenting is all about. And that really gets to the heart of it. Parenting isn't about following some instruction manual. It's something you live. Every single day, you're wrestling with these huge philosophical questions like, what's freedom? What's authority? What does it even mean to be a person? It forces you to question your deepest assumptions, starting with how you see the child. Okay, so where do we even begin with this? Well, let's start by challenging one of the biggest, most common assumptions we all have about kids themselves. You know how it is. A child has an outburst, they're crying, they're scared, and our first instinct is often to just label it as irrational behavior. But the idea here is that this is a huge mistake. It's a convenient label, sure, but it stops us from doing the really hard work of listening. This is where we see a really powerful shift in perspective. Instead of seeing a crying child as some irrational little being that needs to be controlled, what if we see them as a logical person? Someone who is trying their best to communicate a need, or a fear, or a frustration, but they're doing it in the only way they know how. When you make that switch, everything changes. And this just brilliantly shows what's really going on behind the scenes. What we see as helplessness is actually a state of constant, exhausting work. I mean, every single thing that we just take for granted, swallowing, focusing our eyes, even just lifting an arm, is a mountain they are learning to climb. It's a monumental struggle they are actively fighting through every single day. So if the child is this dedicated learner, this active worker, what does that make the parent? Well, the answer might actually surprise you. All right, let's really unpack this idea. Let's build it together piece by piece. When a child is born, it's not just one new person entering the world. In that exact same moment, a new mother and a new father are born too. And what that means is you've got 3 amateurs in the room. And isn't that just a huge relief? No one starts out as an expert. The parent is learning how to be a parent right alongside the child learning how to be a person. And, just accepting that is the first step away from all that pressure of feeling like you have to know all the answers. So a much better way to think about this, instead of, say, a manager and an employee, is more like a master and an apprentice. See, the master's job isn't to control the apprentice forever. It's to teach them everything they know, with the ultimate goal that one day, the apprentice won't need the master at all. And that leads us to a really powerful and honestly kind of counterintuitive idea about the true purpose of this whole parenting thing. So here it is, the crucial point. Successful parenting isn't about creating dependence. It's not about attachment for its own sake. It's about systematically and lovingly building your child's ability to thrive in the world completely without you. The relationship is literally built to end. What this means in practice is shifting our language away from all those constant warnings and limitations. Instead of that chorus of, you'll fall, you'll get sick, that's too hard, we can start fostering real competence. We can equip them with the tools, both emotional and practical, to handle a world that isn't always going to be easy on them. Okay, so how do we actually do this? How does this look in the real world? Well, it starts by fundamentally changing the way we talk, and maybe even more importantly, the way we listen. This table really draws a fascinating contrast. The old conversation on the left, that's all about the adult knowing best and just trying to manage the child. But the new conversation, that's about respecting the child as a person who has a valid inner world. It's moving from dismissing their fear with "don't be scared" to acknowledging it by saying, "I hear that you're scared." It's about shifting from interrupting to just creating space for them to figure out what they want to say. And this is just perfectly captured in this little story from the source material. So an uncle proudly gives his 4-year-old nephew a toy drum kit. He's expecting a ton of excitement, right? But the child just looks at it, then looks over at his uncle's real drum kit and says very simply, "But this isn't the real one." Now, in that moment, the kid isn't being ungrateful. He's not being difficult. He's actually being a philosopher. He's making a clear, honest observation about reality. He sees the world for what it is, and our attempts to give him a substitute can feel, well, dishonest. He's inviting us to have a real conversation with him. And so, this entire way of thinking leaves us with one last, vital question. Every interaction we have, every conversation, every choice we make as parents, it's all an answer to this. Are we just preparing them to survive the world as it is right now? Or are we equipping them with the clarity, the creativity, and the courage to build a better one?